Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the conclusion of this expose of sorts of the ELK sale to Enwin, um, I think it's prudent that we examine, from a very neutral, non biased point of view, the landscape of what was happening between the years 2018 and 2022 till present, really, and kind of paint this broad picture of what was happening with our electricity during that time and how this topic of regional electricity became like this galvanizing force in this political hot topic that pushed Councillor Bondi into the mayor's seat. This is the main topic that basically got everyone's support in the region to usher her in and knock off the old boys club, which had been running town hall and ELK for a great many years. And so let's move into using the power of Facebook search. Let's see what was happening with our electricity during that time period.
Flicker, flicker, little light, shining softly through the night. Flicker, flicker, guide my way, turning darkness into day. Flicker, flicker, little light, spark of joy so warm and bright. Flicker, flicker, up so high, dancing stars within the sky. Flicker, flicker, here and there, magic glowing everywhere. Flicker, flicker, up so high, dreams take wing and spirits fly. Flicker, flicker, never still, growing softly on the hill. Flicker, flicker, tiny spark, chasing shadows through the dark. Flicker, flicker, never still, warming hearts with golden thrill.
I'm not surprised that the Ontario Energy Board has fined ELK Energy. There's been a lot of red flags for a long time. So, finally the Ontario Energy Board has done its due diligence, looked into it, and now it's up to the shareholders, which is Essex Town Council, and the board of directors on ELK to have that conversation about what are next steps and who's accountable for this. Right? We have been saying all along, let's double check that the asset management plan is great. And now we have proof from the Ontario Energy Board, which oversees utility companies, saying, hey, there are no records on inspections, on record keeping with assets. So this is very alarming. I would hope, they did take away my money, and that's okay because there's a means to an end. And if it improves our reliability of our distribution system, I'm all for it, right? I don't do this job for the money. But I think at this point, council needs to look at how we appoint the board of directors for our owned utility company. We need to look for that skill set, that expertise in this sector, and say, do we have a plan? Is succession planning in the works? Can we have board limits? For example, the former Essex mayor, how long are these board members there? And can we bring in some fresh voices and really open up the books? Why are the ELK meetings closed to the public? These should be open. Council should get information. It's very secretive what happens, and now we're kind of seeing why.
And you can see this is what I mean when I say, this issue galvanized the public and propelled Councillor Sherry to run for mayor in the election and take it down, become the mayor of Essex, and become the chair of ELK. And to her credit, two things she said in that interview she did follow through on. She made the minutes of the ELK board meetings public. And you can go and look for yourself, beginning in I think 2023. the majority of the public session of the ELK minutes were public. But then there's also, private sessions when they went to in-camera meetings, when they were discussing sensitive things like the strategic review and everything related to the sale to Enwin. So in that respect, yes, there was more transparency. The other thing that I believe Mayor Sherry did properly is that once she became mayor and took on the chair of ELK, I think the board that was initially formed did have a lot of strengths and did have representatives from the electrical industry. And I think she went out of her way to do that and put that together. More on that in the next video. But there's something else I really have to touch on, and it's a bit of a, I wouldn't say misnomer, but I think in this clip we just watched, Sherry plays up something that may or may not be true. I say this because after the Wayne Miller interview I did, I was contacted by a former ELK board member, someone who was on the board in 2021 and 22, but then was replaced with the new incoming board. And so this person wants to stay confidential. They don't want their name revealed, but they did provide me with answers to a lot of questions. And one of the questions was pertaining to that $5,000 fine issued by the OEB to ELK. And this person tells me specifically that that fine was in relation to the asset management plan and like the inventory of assets and things like that not being pushed to the OEB on time. And because the main employee in charge of that those documentations was away on sick leave for a long time. This person wouldn't get into the nature of that, but again, this was the year 2021, 2022. Maybe this person was sick with COVID or something, took long-term leave from ELK, and the company was too strapped for time or knowledge or personnel to be able to submit these documents in time, and so OEB levered a fine. And that's the story they told me. So I'm passing that along for clarification right now because we won't have another chance to discuss this. Lastly, I'm going to play a segment from Kingsville Town Council. This is a very important segment. And most important thing about this is the time. So in the clip that you just saw from the Windsor Star of Sherry talking about, what's going to happen with the utility and what changes she'd like to see about the infrastructure and the asset management. That clip was in 2022. Prior to showing that clip, I showed all the Facebook posts of people talking about flickers. Those were pretty much between 2019 and 2025. You can look at the dates. I'm going to play this clip from Kingsville Town Council from the year 2020. ELK goes as a delegation to Kingsville Council, and they ask our reps a bunch of questions. And ELK representatives lay out exactly what is causing all the electrical flickers and the disruptions in service. And spoiler, it's kind of not their fault.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any other questions? Councillor Dion?
Not a question, but I just wonder, since we have our community rep here, if she has anything to offer, if she wanted to add anything to the conversation. Just want to open that door to give her that opportunity.
Always good to put a director online, just to at least recognize the service providing the representation. Dr. Millijan, just say welcome.
Let me just make sure. Is my mic working?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for asking me. Yeah, so I've been on the ELK board since this term. It's been a learning experience. Oops, lost my mic. It's been a learning experience, and a lot of the issues that you raise at the council table were certainly issues that have been discussed at the board level. I just want, Mark, maybe you could clarify one point, because I recall we had discussed the whole issue about the expansion for the greenhouse capacity, that part of the report from the province was that when you undergo these things, that there should be an expectation that you're going to have more interruptions rather than fewer, at least until the work's done. Did I misunderstand that, or is that something you might want to clarify?
Yeah, I think kind of Norm touched upon the fact that as capacity is reaching its point, the grid that would affect, for example, Kingsville, is potentially being taxed, and it's less reliable until this regional planning process and expansion actually happens.
So to clarify, when is expected that this is completed? How many years?
I believe 2021 to 2024 is the current time frame.
Okay, so we should just let our residents know that we need to be aware that these are the limitations of the utility, and it's going to be another 4 years before we can have an expectation that we would have, say, the same kind of delivery and reliability as you might, for example, in a bigger municipality. I mean, that has been brought home to me, that just the fact that we're a rural municipality, we have a lot of kilometers of electrical grid to get through, and we are we have both the increased construction, but also the animal contact and car accidents that we're more vulnerable than, let's say, a bigger city might be.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Miljan. And certainly the history around energy in our area has kind of been consistent. And when you look at the maps of where all the transformer stations are across Windrush County, it could have been argued for decades that the southern part of Essex County was underserviced, specifically referencing our Kingsville transformer station, where we at one point were servicing all of Leamington, Kingsville, parts into Essex, Harrow, as obviously Elk Energy is well aware. As a former director myself, and I know Mr. Queen served as a director on Elk, we certainly were aware of those pressures and concerns. As the southern part of Essex County was growing, there were no investments or reinforcements provided on the south end, whereas you saw all the transformer stations up through Lausanne into Windsor. Multiple stations were available with significant capacity. So trying to draw capacity our way was a significant challenge with any potential expansion. Up until recently, when we've seen the investment in the transformer station in Kingsville, the reinvestment, the strengthening and reinforcement of the distribution lines, especially along Route 2 all the way out to Leamington, where the new transformer station is also in place now to help relieve a lot of the pressure off of our Kingsville transformer station. I guess the question I can get to with Elk Energy is based on the service that you do draw from at the transformer station, is that level improving in terms of ability to redistribute the power to your centers? Again, Cottam, Kingsville, Harrow, those areas. And the part two question is there a concern with all the reinforcement Hydro One has done to their current lines, if the Elk's current distribution line, which hasn't necessarily been updated or brought up to a higher degree, when can we anticipate some of that reinforcement happening on those old lines?
I think I'll pass that one on to Norm as well, our operations manager.
Okay, I will try to answer that. I believe in your first question, your concern was, are we getting adequate supply out of Hydro One now with the work that's happening as they're making the additional expansion and growth in the other areas? We have to complete an application on an annual basis. We provide a load profile that's used in the regional plan for the overall plan, which allocates capacity to us. So for that fact, we're there without having larger customers requesting connections. We have adequate capacity coming into us. As far as ELK system, in your second question, the overall system in the ELK's plant is not taxed in its capacity capability. We're probably using anywhere from 20 to 50% of the capacity of what our line can handle as far as distributing it. It's a matter as to what we receive to distribute would become the potential. In the overall picture, any significant additional capacity is already allocated out through 2022, 2023, potentially 2024 for all of the stations out of the Kingsville Leamington corridor, as well as whatever they can steal from the Lausanne station or Belle River station in order to make those connections. The greater build, and I'm active on the committee. I'm active in the meetings. Is that we're placing transformer stations not necessarily where loads are, but where we have capability of dropping assets on ground, and then we're building great lengths to get to the loads. So through the big push, they're making an additional change to try to do a larger expansion out of Kingsville and actually support Kingsville coming out of Windsor with the 230 volt transmission line in order to support the Leamington line, which would give us greater reliability for our system or our customers in the. And again, I'm looking at the whole southern shore, because we're basically once we lose the Kingsville station, we don't have another station until Amherstburg. So the whole southern shore is kind of left isolated for any potential growth capacity. But currently, all of those feeders capacity is more or less allocated. I'm receiving new line diagrams from Hydro One from our supplier out of the Kingsville station at least once a week as they alter the feeds out of the stations to juggle loads. So that's where the stations are sitting at for feeding the customers. Going back to one of the councillors' comments about since you sold shares in ELK that you'd seen additional flickers. Well, since then, originally the feeder that serviced Kingsville and the substation in Kingsville, and that was it. Now it's running down Road 2 and it's feeding a bunch of customers heading out that way. So now we've added another 7, 8, 10 kilometers of feeder onto that line that's exposed to additional weather, traffic, whatever is there, as well as the additional load to impact us for outages, for incidents, and that's part of the process. That's part of the growth. That's part of industry growing in the area. Unfortunately, that's the poison pill for having growth. Now I hope I answered what you're asking.
You're partway there. That's pretty close.
Am I? Okay.
So I guess the question as the reliability is strengthening along that corridor, how can we strengthen the reliability along like our service centers? So businesses on Main Street Gotham, businesses Main Street Kingsville, through the core, they've been, I'm sure you've had reports of malfunctions in some of their operations and equipment, whether it be freezers, whether it be air conditioning, you name it, a lot of the outages and the damage caused. Is there an ability to work with your shareholders, I guess with your customers, I guess is the best word, to work with your customers in how to better prevent some of these continued failures of equipment? Is there a community plan that directors and yourselves can help try to put together to support those in the community to better protect obviously their investments and then not be so at risk with again, whether it's a flicker or a consistent flicker or just the short-term outages? How can we better I guess strengthen that relationship with customers overall?
That's a good question. Now, to understand with the flicker, when we see the momentaries like that's preventing a prolonged outage, because that's actually resetting. It's an automatic reset on basically an automatic reset on a breaker. It prevents somebody having to patrol the line to find a root cause, isolate the issue, and then restore the part. So as a flicker may be annoying, may be an annoyance, it prevents a prolonged outage as opposed to having to just reset the clocks. So that's part of the self-healing process of the system, leaving only the affected area out as opposed to all of the area out. We could look into doing some community work. There is substantial. We're working with Hydro One with our supplier on a regular basis. We are chasing substantial momentaries coming out of different stations, supplying different service areas. Predominantly, we have been not the cause. There's been additional issues, but it's not an easy task in getting them necessarily to the table to accept the cause, but then to identify it, because some of the issues came down to a faulty set of lightning arresters. But trying to find the faulty set of lightning arresters and identifying which sets they were was an issue. But right now, coming out of the Kingsville station, heading towards Harrow, we're experiencing significant issues again. Out of probably 12 outages, one of them was ours. So it's not always us. It winds up being us pushing the button to get them to dig a little deeper to get resolved, but it's not always our system that is the cause or the root cause of those issues. So it's not always as simple as to say that we can put a fix in place for it, as much as it is that we need to work with our partner and try to come to a common ground or to a resolution with the two of us.
Yeah, appreciate that, and certainly I know we can probably have dialogue all night long based on trying to respond to obviously to the customer base and the service that we certainly rely on. Business, residents, your communities as a whole, certainly rely on the big responsibility that you have as a distribution company and having to work with the other partners in play as well. So I think we realize that that relationship is part and parcel of going forward. In terms of identifying your message of you're looking at basically an operations capital strategy going forward with some restructuring, is there I guess a method of identifying priority areas, or are you going by age of infrastructure or demand on certain areas? Is that something you can kind of touch upon so that we can help your customers understand a little bit greater as to where you're headed?
When the asset condition assessment, once is all completed, there's the health fundamentals come out of it. So age becomes one factor inside of it. Tending outages, there's a lot of different indices that flow into the formula in order to come out to identify areas that are specific or at a higher risk of failure. Right, and then that's what will drive it. It's not a single point. It's not just specifically on age. So in poles, we're having an issue with some poles, with a group of poles that are in the low 20-year range, which are supposed to be a 45 to 65-year pole factor, but we're having issues at 22 years. So that's identifying a target now that as we move into our next year testing, that we're going to focus a bit harder on poles inside that group to identify if it's specific to a certain area, or is it specific to that group of poles or the treatment of that type of poles, so that we can further target our information. Aside from that, our standards group, we've gone to a standardized testing platform, so we can upload all of our information back to the forum. They're cataloging it inside of a database, which then can be used to extrapolate further out off of what your stuff is. So as much as you may test 10% of your poles, if you know what the other 30% are, you may be able to get a historical off of another area that's tested in the same capacity or in the same area off the same soil basis to see if you're trending in the same direction, and as to whether or not you should alter your focus in order to go harder on a subject, or to back off one type of poles and move to another type of poles, for instance. So those are some of the items that are coming out of the asset condition assessment. And Connectrix as a group was the experimental was the experimental arm of Ontario Hydro back in the day. And when the deregulation came, they broke them out. So they have the historical data for all of Ontario Hydro's information, as well as all the utilities they've ever worked for, which is why the Ontario Energy Board uses them to give them guidelines towards asset condition assessment for things that should be done. So that's the group we partnered up with in order to do our ACA. And we're using their formulas, and they support us as we move forward, as our information comes in, to provide us their clinical background in looking at the data.
Okay, and thank you for that update. And I figure you'll be hosting a number of potential public forums, similar to how Hydro One has announced some of their changes in the future. I guess to help and assist with your continued communications plan and outreach, please come forward to our municipality. We'd be willing to help support in that initiative. Again, with host locations, assistance in the communication and circulation of your notices. We'd be more than willing to be a partner in that essence, so that you get the feedback that I think is appreciated at the upper levels before approval. So I do appreciate your time that you've taken today to come to council.
So did you catch that? Back in 2020, we knew that the flickers was the system trying to heal itself and prevent long-term outages, that there was major issues with growth in the Kingsville area in relation to all of the new greenhouses that were built in the late 2010s and early 2020s, especially down the Road 2 corridor. It was pointed out that there's only one service line from Kingsville to Harrow, and the next transmission station is all the way in Amherstburg. In that whole southern stretch, there's no transfer grids or anything like that to support electricity for that region. And so any issue coming out of Kingsville directly zaps Harrow and Essex. And that responsibility falls on Hydro One because that transmission line is in their territory. And the director, Norm, he says, 1 out of 12 instances of a flicker, it's ELK's fault. 11 out of 12, it's Hydro One. So, and this was known in 2020. So, why was ELK dumped on for like the next 3 years in this run up to the 2022 municipal election? And why was it all blown out of proportion that, if you have a flicker, tell us, let us know, we got to resolve these issues. But literally at the start of that segment, Dr. Miljan points out there is increased capacity coming. There is investments into the electric systems coming to that region, and it'll probably take 4 or 5 years to get there, which is probably nearing completion around this time, the time of this video being posted, given that those projects were on time and on budget. So now's about the time when we can expect some resolutions to the flickers, and I will say that it has been better. It hasn't been like it was in 2020, 2021, when there were times when it seemed like it was every day. So it just seems like this was a political hot topic, and the ELK issue was kind of blown out of proportion because it was Hydro One's fault for the most part. And I don't know what else to say. Oh yeah, they're working with Kinetrix, the gold standard consultants for public utilities across Ontario. This company that was spun out of Ontario Hydro, and they're professionals at asset management and condition reports, testing their lines and load capacities, where there might be problems or faults, the conditions of your telephone poles, conditions of all the assets. We had them as our consultancy way back in 2020. And we were implementing standards and processes and systems and using these experts to put all these things in place. That was all done already. I don't know. There it is. It was pointed out in 2020, and yet we played this charade for the next so many years. Oh, is it ELK's fault? Oh, is it ELK's asset management? It was ELK underinvesting in their infrastructure? Is the ELK grid capable of supporting our electricity? The directors just said we have enough capacity on our lines. It's the stuff that comes into our lines from Hydro One territory. Case closed. ELK was not at fault.